Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 1907 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. Wow, I don't know what I did, but last week's video exploded. One of the best single week performances I've had of a video ever. Maybe the best ever of something that wasn't news related. Incredible. A bunch of new subs joined the channel. We are almost to 2,000 subs. 93 away. How quickly can we get there? I didn't expect getting it this quickly. I mean, we've jumped up a lot. So let's keep rolling into the new year. Maybe these monetization options are finally making the channel even more visible, which is great. But that's not why you're here today. After last week's video of talking about games where you should skip the first one, it had me thinking about games where you should skip the sequel or sequels. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Now let me preface this with a lot of these games I do still like. It's just compared to the first one, there is a noticeable step down in quality or just something about it that makes it not as great as the original. And we're going to start off with one that really highlights this sentiment, which is with a series that I really enjoy. But this is my least favorite entry in it by far, and that is Pikmin 3. Now, up until this point, Pikmin 1 and 2 built upon each other. So the first game introduced the concept, the second game brought 2 new Pikmin types as well as this new underground section, and the third one you think would add to it as well, but it also subtracted. So it removed the caves, it removed white and purple Pikmin, and then it started restricting baseline things that you would have from the original game, where you couldn't have 100 Pikmin from the beginning. You had to build up to that, which unfortunately is something they carried over into Pikmin 4 as well. And I truly just believe they do it for time gating reasons. There's no real gameplay reason to do that. One of the big things about Pikmin was the fact that you could have 100 units on screen at once, which was a big feat on the GameCube. Moving forward in history, that's not really that impressive any longer, but still it's one of the, as someone who loves the series, one of my favorite things about it. And Pikmin 3 just wasn't great. It was also on the Wii U, and it had a control scheme that was reliant on the Wii U tablet. Now, I have picked up the one they made for the Switch. I have yet to play it, but it just, when I finally got through and played through it, which also for a time, this game got insanely expensive, so I also bought it when it was around $100, because I'm an idiot, and I needed to make sure I had the full Pikmin series, and just a lot is wrong with it, so definitely any of the other ones but 3, 1, 2, or 4, skip 3. And that's kind of what this video is going to be like. So, another jumping off point here. The God of War series was one of my favorite series on the PS2. When I got my PS3, I plowed through God of War 3. And then there was another game called God of War Ascension. That they kind of, you can tell Santa Monica Studios didn't really quite know what they were going to do here. Because unlike the PSP side stories, like Ghost of Sparta and whatever the other one was, this one was meant to be like a big budget follow-up to God of War 3. But because God of War 3 basically wrapped up the story, what were they going to do? Okay, let's do a prequel. And so, as always with prequels, the stakes aren't as high. You're retconning things that were meant one thing are now meaning another one. And this game in general really killed the God of War franchise until it got rebooted in 2018, because it just wasn't all that great. All the lore had been expended. There wasn't really much left to explore, and it just felt like going through the motions yet again for God of War, but was not nearly as enjoyable as 1, 2, and 3. So definitely by far, it's still a fun game though. And when you get to I think it's the Trials of Archimedes or something of that, it is insanely hard. And probably the best part and worst part of the game simultaneously. Because for some reason, I always play these games on the hardest difficulty. It's something that goes back to when I played God of War 3 in front of Jen, and I wanted to show off and be like, I'm playing on Titan mode. And then I played the later games on Give Me God of War mode. So it's just something I do. But yeah, God of War Ascension, you can definitely forget about that one. I actually didn't even have it in my collection until maybe 6 months ago, just because at this point, I'm trying to plug some holes. So I picked up games like that and Gears of War Judgment. You know, these games that aren't great, but I'd still like to have them just so that I could go through and try it again. Now, here's one I covered on the channel a few years ago. So back in the day, I discovered the Strike series, and I really, really enjoyed it. I found it on the Sega Channel, of all things, with Desert Strike. And I picked up Desert Strike for the SNES, I picked up Jungle Strike, but I did not know there was a third game called Urban Strike. So when I did a Shooters Month a couple of years ago, I ended it with Urban Strike. And Urban Strike really is more of the same and is by far my least favorite of the three. And the reason for that is because it's fun being in the jungle, it's fun being in the desert. It makes for interesting combat. You can have realistic scenarios, but in Urban Strike, you're in a foggy San Francisco, you're in a really crowded metropolitan New York. It just, in order to have it be, or you're in a darkened Las Vegas, so it just, in order for the game to be presentable, you need to have these matte backgrounds, but a city or urban environments are going to have so much detail that it really just looks bad. And they also introduced a third-person run-and-gun sections, which are hit or miss. Like, they're fun in small doses, but having so much relying on this new combat, almost like it's a separate game that's been attached to the Strike series, just isn't great. And it's one that you guys can miss. And stick with the first two. And I am gonna plan on checking out some of the later entries like Soviet Strike and Nuclear Strike. All right, now here's one that I hate this game so much. I've had people defend it. I've had people say they like it. I've heard from others it's not that bad. I don't like it, and that is Toe Jam and Earl 2 Panic on Funkatron. Everything that made the first game special has been removed. No random worlds, no running around finding presents. They have all of this bogged down, waste of time, things like shaking trees, capturing earthlings, going to the funk zone, needing to switch into a different window so you can see if there's hidden pathways or the funk's vision, whatever it is. Yeah, I know in the first Toe Jam and Earl you would have to pull up the map and see where you're going, and that would take time, and then the split screen, there's no way to be off screen with the other person, I believe. I think you both have to be on the same screen. And it just seemed like such a backwards pace. And then when I found out years later that they were making a Toe Jam and Earl 2 that was going to be in the style of the first one and would have the ability to go inside buildings and things of that nature, then I really got upset. I just was like, oh my goodness, how could they do this to me? I didn't know there was a Toe Jam and Earl 3, and then Toe Jam and Earl 4 at least goes back to the original formula, but it implements a lot of stuff that was in Toe Jam and Earl 2 that I didn't like, and is also probably one of the biggest reasons why Toe Jam and Earl 4, even though I enjoyed it, just does not have the same staying power, and nothing ever will, to be honest, with the first one. I love the first game so much, but yeah, Toe Jam and Earl 2, not my bag, not my cup of tea, not something I ever want to play again. I've tried multiple times. It is awful. I don't know what the hell they were thinking. Okay, now jumping to the PS1 era. So I really enjoyed, the reason I bought a PS1 was because of this series, and when they were coming out with this sequel, which was originally supposed to be a side story, but then it became a full-blown sequel, so it's Resident Evil 3, I was excited because, okay, great, we're bringing Jill back, we're going to see what she did during the events of Resident Evil 2. This is cool. Then, I didn't realize at the time that makes it technically a prequel, because you're doing a bunch of events that you already know what happens, and then you know the city gets blown up, so how much actual impact can she have? Then they have you being chased by an unkillable enemy named the Nemesis, which my least favorite part of Resident Evil 2 was the Mr. X chasing you on the B side. And that's not because it's a bad mechanic, it just... Actually, yeah, I do think unkillable enemies is a bad mechanic. I don't like it in any game. I didn't like it in Dead Space 2. I didn't like it in this game. Anytime you have an unkillable enemy that's stalking you, I'm not a fan of it. But that is just there just wasn't much added to it. The formula started to bog down a little bit. There wasn't a cool central location. Like, it didn't really feel like there was something you could hang your hat on. Like, in Resident Evil 1, the mansion was very cool to explore. In Resident Evil 2, the police station was very cool to explore. You uncovered things. With this one, it seemed like all the plot had already happened as far as the intrigue and what's going on, and more this was just putting together puzzle pieces and fleshing out the rest of what happened. And it's funny, maybe that's part of it being originally supposed to be a side story, unlike Code Veronica, which was supposed to be original Resident Evil 3. But I digress. I probably should go back and play it again, because now that we haven't had another tank-style Resident Evil other than those main 4 entries, I probably would like it more, Nemesis notwithstanding. And, I mean, how can you not love the Jill outfit? I mean, that was iconic right there. One of the greatest heroines in a video game, that look with her blue tank tube top and her black miniskirt. Now, keeping in that series, there's going to be 2 Resident Evil entries here. So I didn't make this distinction, but also the sequels have to be similar to the first one. So for instance, I would not say Resident Evil 4 is a bad sequel to Resident Evil 3 because it's the same style, or let's say Ocarina of Time to Link to the Past, because you change the formula. Well, Resident Evil 4 is kind of the next goalpost as far as where the series went. So after 4, I had a great time. I really enjoyed 4. I really enjoyed 5 as well. However, Resident Evil 6, the game that was claiming to go back to the roots, be more like the older Resident Evils, but then also have the action of the newer Resident Evils. I played the Leon campaign for maybe 2 hours after I picked this up for $20 when it was on sale, because I didn't buy it because it got bad reviews. And I just didn't like it. I loved that the gang was all there, but by this point, it felt like I was playing a Kojima game where it's all this overblown this and that, and like, where's my isolated story where I'm just in a town running away from zombies? I don't care about going to corporate Umbrella. I don't care about being in fighter jets or doing all this other, like, it got too much. it got too much. And even being in the world as playing as Leon, something as simple as when I push the pause button or my inventory screen, I don't want to still have the ability to get attacked by enemies. I know Dead Space did that, and it wasn't terrible in Dead Space, but just something in Resident Evil 6 rubbed me the wrong way having that, because maybe it just felt too similar to the other games. And I put it down, haven't tried it since, and I've just had no interest in going back to it. I've had people since then say, hey, you should give it another shot. I don't know. Maybe I will one of these days. Okay, so here's one that might surprise you guys, and this is what I'm getting at as far as sometimes the sequel is not as good. And on paper, everything this game does should be better. If you could take the map from this game and put it in the first game, I'd probably like it more. And that is, unfortunately, Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I know this is one of my top games of last year. It's still a phenomenal game. But compared to Breath of the Wild, it is a huge step back. They put so much focus on the crafting and the building that, in my opinion, it really robs some of the essence of what made the first game so good. No longer can you just run through the world and accomplish everything from the beginning if you are smart with the tool set you have. Now you are reliant on needing these little capsule things that can float or can fire, or that you now have to get weapons that you craft yourself, and you have to realize how to craft those weapons. And once you do, then going and fighting a badass enemy who's 50 levels higher than you, or not 50, but who's considerably more dangerous, doesn't matter, because you can get those materials anyways and craft that super weapon if you just happen to stumble across a cache of them, or make something like that, or at least make something somewhat powerful. And you don't have a bomb anymore. Like, you don't. They remove so much. Like, you have no way of implementing damage without it being a weapon. And here's another thing they did, is that one of the coolest parts of Breath of the Wild was going to the island and having all your gear removed and then having to survive the island. That was such a cool wrinkle. One of the highlights of that game when you find that island. Well, they then take that and they put that in like 30 different shrines, and just weaken the whole impact of that. To the point of when you're in that shrine, if you find any items, you lose the items once you get your gear restored. And the underworld is so cool. Lighting it up is so cool. But man, it's just... That's what I mean. Like, I wish you could do the sky and the underworld in Breath of the Wild's mechanics where you have the bomb and the ice manipulation rather than what they've done. It's still a great game, but yeah, compared to the first one, not nearly as good. And I would say the same thing for another game that came out recently for a game I absolutely loved, and that is God of War Ragnarok. Now, I was much more disappointed with this game than I was with Tears of the Kingdom. Unlike the original God of War, where the game really felt like it was breathing life into the franchise, you completely changed things. You built up Kratos as this wonderful character who has this dark backstory that he knows of, but no one else really knows about it. And then you're finding out where his place in the Norse mythology world is. In Ragnarok, it seems like they did the Game of Thrones Season 8 thing where, okay, you know what? Let's cram everything into this one game rather than spread it out. Oh, Atreus is Loki now, and Loki's going to do X, and then we have to send him off to Jotunheim and all these other things, and then him and Kratos are going to have issues, and blah, 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 and they're going to be, like... You're going to have Odin in there and Thor and like everyone's going to get dispatched by the end of the game. And then the whole MacGuffin you're chasing the entire game, when you finally get it, does not get to be used. Which is such a bad way of doing things. Yeah, you subverted the expectations, but you don't. It's Chekhov's gun. If you guys don't know what Chekhov's gun is, there's a play. There's a playwright named Anton Chekhov. And essentially what he would say is, if you introduce a gun in Act 1, that gun has got to go off by the end of Act 3. And that's important. That's foreshadowing in the audience's mind. Now, they may forget that, but some won't. And then when it does go off, you're going to have the people who forgot about it. If they see it again, be like, oh, God, it was there all along. And the people who knew it was there will be like, the tension that built the whole time of is it going to be used? Oh, my God, it was used. In God of War Ragnarok, the whole tension is about getting the mask. I can't remember what the mask is called, but the mask that Odin's been searching for millennium, that somehow Loki has the ability to locate. Why Loki does? Whatever. Plot reasons. You finally get it. You don't have Odin put it on and defeat him. You don't have anything happen. No, it just... Loki destroys it. Are you kidding me? The whole game was based on getting this mask. The whole conflict between him and Kratos was based on him wanting to trust Odin. And then the whole thing that this was for just gets, all right, whatever. It's bad. It is bad. It is bad writing. It just is. It's not, compared to 2018, which was masterful. It just felt like they accelerated and rushed everything. They wanted. I don't know why. I mean, now what are you going to do? You're going to put Kratos in Egypt or one of the other mythologies? I hope so. It just didn't make sense. Oh, anyways, enough about God of War Ragnarok. Okay, here's one that's kind of cheating because I did say that it has to be on the same sort of format, but I'm still going to count it, and that is WrestleMania X8. So this was the follow-up to No Mercy. And I was so excited. I was super invested in wrestling at the time. And now this was right after the NWO era, or NWO invasion happened in wrestling. So it was going to be a game where you had The Rock and Hogan and Austin and everyone officially on the same roster. You're going to have TLC matches now. I think they brought out Hell in a Cell or Cage match or whatever. Stuff that wasn't in No Mercy. And it just wasn't as good. It wasn't as good. They changed the combat, which to this day, I don't know why anyone would go away from that Aki engine. That thing was a godsend. It's one of the reasons why I want to find that Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 on N64 that uses the same engine. And for some reason, it went to Def Jam. The Def Jam games took it. So that's why I really liked Def Jam Vendetta and Fight for New York, because X8 was just terrible. And still is. And you know what's funny is I lost my copy of it. This is one of the few games. This and Perfect Dark went missing. I still had the box and manual for Perfect Dark, but the game was gone. But WrestleMania X8 was gone, along with, I'm pretty sure I had a copy of Mario Strikers at one point. Who knows? Who knows? I have suspicions, but what are you going to do? All right. And getting down to the last few here. So this is one that I just don't know why people think this game is so great. I can only imagine it's people who did not play the first one, and that is Red Dead Redemption 2. This game is not that great. I don't know why everyone loves it so much. First of all, it's a prequel to Red Dead Redemption, so you already know nothing of note's going to happen. And if you've beaten Red Dead Redemption, you know the fates of certain people, and you know certain people who aren't in it, so you already know going into it, oh, well, when's that going to happen? Which is why prequels just aren't interesting. They really aren't. You already know what's going to happen in this game. They make things in Red Dead Redemption 2 slower, less fun. You are tied down to this group, this camp of people that you have to deal with. I mean, Red Dead Redemption, the first one, you just felt like a lone gunman out in the wilderness, the Old West. You could go out and you could wrangle horses, you could rope people, you could come across a random scene and stop it. You can go and chase down outlaws. In this game, you can still do that, but then you have to go home and deal with cleaning the pots, or you have to go and deal with the infighting of your camp, and especially you're dealing with the camp of the people that you know are the villains of the first game, who eventually betray you, and it's such a weird feeling of being in this, and it's just I don't find it as gripping. I like the main character a lot. He's really a great character, but knowing what's likely going to happen to him the whole time, it's hard to get super invested. And you want to be more invested in John Marsden, and then Marsden looks like a complete buffoon for the first half of the game, and it's just not great. Not great. Not a great game. And I really, it's funny, I saw a poll the other day where it got voted as the best game of all time. I'm like, recency bias much? I think so. All right, now here's one that is a sequel to a game that I really liked on PS1. And in all honesty, this is still a very fun game. I just don't remember anything about it. And anytime I think of my fond memories of the game, I think of the first one and not this one. And that is Medal of Honor Underground. Now, this was a prequel again, but the prequel didn't really matter because you were doing missions in World War II. But it has better graphics, it's smoother, it felt better, it had more intricate levels. And at the end of the day, it just wasn't as much fun as the first one. It's one of those things where, warts and all, sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle. And even if you try and replicate it, it just doesn't feel the same. And I don't know if it was because you really never even see the main character at all, but I liked James Patterson more. And you were playing as a French insurgent. It just, I don't know. There wasn't the coolness of the freshness of it. Maybe that was it. Maybe because it really was truly just more levels at the end of the day with a little bit shinier this and that. And then the third game after this was Allied Assault, which was only on PC. And I just dropped off of it there. And I didn't get back to these shooters until Call of Duty 4. All right, and then another couple here. So this one really bummed me out. I love Luigi's Mansion, and I was not a fan of Luigi's Mansion 2. The fact that you have 4 mansions seems like it would be great, but then they're level based and you go in and out of the mansion constantly, so that just seemed weird. And then Luigi's Mansion 3, at least they put it on a central location, but then the central location felt level based because it was based on actual levels of the hotel. And it has so much time gating. Both these, like a lot of these things have time gating to make the game last longer, where you can't just do everything. Unlike the first Luigi's Mansion, where it just felt like you could explore to your heart's content and uncover stuff. And it just wasn't great. Still fun. Like I said, with all these games, other than Toe Jam and Earl 2, I still enjoy them, but it does leave something to be desired. All right, and then last game we're going to talk about here. I have a couple more, but let's cut it off here. I actually got enough to make a second video down the line. So this isn't the actual game. This is Bloodstain Curse of the Moon, which I love. I love this game. However, Bloodstain Curse of the Moon 2, I do not. And it was kind of like the same thing, lightning in a bottle. This first game really evoked that classic Castlevania style. Really made me think of Castlevania 3. Enjoyed the different abilities of the players you could switch between. It had different ways of playing through it. You can have Zangetsu kill the other guys and then get super powered. There's multiple endings. Very, very good music. Interesting boss fights. I loved it. And then the next game, Bloodstain Curse of the Moon 2, introduced 4 new characters, and it just felt different. Or maybe 3 new characters. I think Zangetsu's still in it, but you have 3 other characters you're working with. And I believe that you do eventually unlock the characters from the first game if you play through it enough times. But the level designs in the first game were very interesting, but not overwhelming. Whereas this game, it seemed like they may have been developing it for the people who said the game was too easy or too easy to get through. Like, okay, we'll show you. So there's a lot of cheap deaths, a lot of less to be desired events in it. Just overall, unfortunately, just didn't capture the essence that made that first game so good. All right, so there you go. That is a gaggle of games where you should skip the sequel, or just know that the sequel's not as good as the one before it. Maybe you should start with that one. So yes, that's what you get for this week, guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. Thank you, everyone who's new to the channel. I see your comments in there. It means the world. I'm sorry if I can't get back to every single one of them, but I just know I am reading them. And hey, let's keep this ball rolling. Like I said, we get to 2,000 subs. Let's try and do it this month. Next month would be great. And I had some people ask me a couple weeks ago about if I was going to do some updates on my backlog for 2024. Yes, I am. In fact, I have an idea where I'll do updates as backlog progress reports, and I really want to think and see if I can do them as a live stream. So I don't know when, I don't know the exact details. I have started playing, so I actually started playing The Last of Us Part 2. That's the first one I'm tackling. And I think because I don't have a computer right now that's strong enough to be able to live stream me actually playing games, but if I do a live stream where we're kind of just discussing the game and maybe going over some visuals, or just you guys can interact with me, let me know if you'd be interested in that. That sounds like something that you would be down with, because I think I can manage that on my laptop here, my work laptop. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. But yes, that's all you get for this week, guys. Thank you again. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.